In today's video, we're going to be looking at when a transversal crosses two parallel lines and the angle pairs and those relationships that are formed. So we talked about the angle pairs and being able to identify them the other day, but today we're going to actually look into these angle pairs and say, okay, they occur, we can identify them now, how do they relate to each other? So to start, we just want to look at these angle pairs again, right? So we want to say, okay, corresponding angles. So we talked about those were the ones that if we highlighted the angles, they made an F, right? They were in the same spot, but in different intersections. So if you say top left of one intersection, it was in the top left of the other, okay? Now, so if we look at this, so one example is angle 1, right? Angle 1 and angle 5, right? Those are corresponding. They are both in the top right of their intersection. So you can see that those two are corresponding. And what we want to talk about is in this blank, we're either going to fill in corresponding, or excuse me, we'll fill in congruent or supplementary. And if you look at 1 and 5, and we'll prove this in class later, but 1 and 5 are congruent, right? Remember, congruent means they have equal measure. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. And we can look through and we can list all the rest of these, right? Angle 2 is congruent to angle 6. Angle 4 is congruent to angle 8. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 7. And they are all congruent because they are corresponding. So we see that corresponding angles are congruent. That's the big takeaway you want to take from that. So second, we want to look at alternate interior angles. So we can erase right here. We want to look alternate interior. So alternate interior angles, remember, made the Z if we highlighted them. So that would be like angle 3 and angle 5. And those will also be congruent. So alternate interior angles are congruent. So angle 3 is congruent to angle 5. The other example would be then 2 and 8. So angle 2 is congruent to angle 8. Okay, congruent, again, meaning same measure. So let's then take a look at another one, alternate exterior. Alternate exterior didn't have the shortcut of us highlighting them, but for example, 1 and 7 would be alternate exterior, and those are also congruent. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 7. We also know angle 4 is congruent to angle 6. So those are all congruent, right? As we see, 1 is congruent to 7, 4 is congruent to 6. Now the other ones we have here, so what's left is same side interior and same side exterior. So if we look at our same side interior here, that would be angle 3 and angle 8. Makes the C shape when we highlight those angles. And those will be the ones that are supplementary. Okay, the supplementary meaning adding to 180 degrees. So right there, angle 3 plus angle 8 would have to equal 180 degrees because they are supplementary. This also is angle 2 plus angle 5 equals 180 degrees. And the same thing is also going to be true for alternate exterior angles. So if we look at alternate exterior angles, we can see 7 this time and 4. Those would also be supplementary. So supplementary angles, right, add up to 180 degrees, meaning that those angles, we have to write them down. So angle 4 plus angle 7 equals 180 degrees. We also have angle 1 and angle 6 equals 180 degrees. So those are the 5 angle pairs that we talked about that were new to you the other day, is knowing how to identify them, but then also we've now added this level of, okay, does that angle pair, is it congruent or is it supplementary? Now, the other two that you need to know, which we've talked about before, is vertical angles. Vertical angles will be congruent. Vertical angles make the X when you highlight them, right? We know that from our last unit. And then linear pairs by definition are supplementary, and they make the T if you highlight them. So how are we going to use this information? One, you really need to know these, because if you don't know these, you won't be able to do problems. It's also going to be very important to know these next time you come to class. But how will we use these in problems? So if we look at this problems on the next page, we can see, okay, we're going to be given parallel lines with the transversal and some angles to find. Okay, very easy on how to find this. So number one, we have to identify the angle pair that we're given. So you identify the angle pair you're given. Then, once you know that, you have to remember, okay, does that mean it's complementary? Does that mean it's congruent, or supplementary? Okay. If it's congruent, they're equal. Set angles equal. And if it's supplementary, you add angles together and set equal to 180. So, for example, let me just show you an example of number one here. Number one, x and 57. So we got to identify what type of angles those are. Those are alternate interior. From the page before, alternate interior angles are congruent, so x equals 52. Now, if we go down, we're going to go down to number 3. So number 3 here, this angle and this angle. Highlight them. You see that F shape appearing. So that means corresponding. Corresponding are congruent. So congruent means set them equal. 10x plus 6 equals 126. So 10x equals 120. X equals 12. So x equals 12. Now, lastly, we have one more to look at here, number 5. Okay. So in number 5, you now see you're having to solve for two things. Okay. The first thing is just look at which one you know immediately. So here, I would look at this and say, okay, 64 and y go together, right? As vertical. Those are vertical. And vertical are congruent. Now I understand that y, you would want to solve for x first, but y is just easier in this case because you see it immediately. So they're vertical, meaning they're congruent, so y equals 64. So we can just write that down immediately. Then let's look at, okay, so I know y is 64. Now I want to look at x. So if I grab x here, okay, does x match up with the original 64? It does not. It is not one of those original angle pairs we looked at. But x does match up with y down here as same side exterior. So since those are same side exterior, we know there's a supplementary. So x plus 64 has to equal 180. So this is a two-step problem, right? It needs to cause us to slow down and identify, but there you have the basic idea of what's going on. So now I would like you to try the other ones that you have here on this page and the page after. You see they're similar page problems, just different pairs, different algebra problems. So you'll try those out and see how you do. And then you can check your answers after that. Thank you.